Hello. I thought tonight I'd talk to you about loneliness, not in a sad way, or well, maybe a little sad, but also in the way you'd talk about rain, or November, or the sound a house makes when everyone else has gone to bed. It's okay if you fall asleep while I'm talking. I won't mind. Sometimes the best conversations are the ones where someone drifts off halfway through, and you just keep talking anyway, quieter, until you're not sure if you're talking to them or just to the room. I've been thinking about loneliness lately because of something that happened last Tuesday. I was at the grocery store, the Orchards, and I was standing in the cereal aisle. I wasn't even shopping for cereal. I'd already gotten what I needed, chicken thighs, a yellow onion, some of that good Wisconsin butter, but I found myself standing there anyway looking at all the boxes. There must have been 60 different kinds of cereal, maybe more. I started reading the names out loud, very quietly, just under my breath. Honey Nut Cheerios, Raisin Bran, Frosted Mini Wheats, Apple Jacks. There was one called Reese's Puffs, which I guess is cereal that tastes like peanut butter cups, and I thought, we really live in remarkable times. I stood there for probably 8 minutes. Nobody came down the aisle. The fluorescent lights were humming, that sound they make that's almost like a note, if notes could feel tired. And I realized I was doing that thing where you're alone in public, and you try to look purposeful, like you're deeply considering your cereal options, when really you're just standing there because standing there feels better than going home to an empty house. So I bought a box of Cracklin' Oat Bran, which I'd never tried before, and I went home. That's not a very interesting story, I know. But loneliness is like that. It's not usually dramatic. It's just you, standing in a cereal aisle, a little too long, reading names of breakfast foods to yourself like a poem. I should tell you what I mean when I say loneliness, because it's a word people use for a lot of different feelings, and I want to be specific. I don't mean being alone. Being alone is different. Being alone is when you choose it, when it feels like space instead of absence. I like being alone sometimes. I'll go for a walk by myself down to the lake, or I'll spend a whole Saturday organizing my record collection by the year it was released, and then by the color of the spine, and then I'll realize that's maybe too much organization and put everything back the way it was. Being alone can feel good, like a glass of water or a room with the lights off in the middle of the day. Loneliness is different. Loneliness is when you're alone and you wish you weren't, but you don't quite know what you're wishing for. It's not always about wanting someone there. Sometimes it's stranger than that. Sometimes it's about wanting to be a different version of yourself. The version that people call, or the version that has plans on Friday nights, or the version that's comfortable in groups and doesn't rehearse casual conversations in the car on the way to the hardware store. I think loneliness is also about time. It's that feeling when you realize a whole day has passed and you haven't said more than 12 words out loud. When I was younger, this was before I moved back to the Upper Peninsula, when I was living downstate for a little while, I had a job at a library. Not a big library. A small one, in a town that was also small, though not as small as Marquette. The kind of town where the library was also the historical society and the place where they held the weekly quilting club. My job was to shelve books. They had me work the evening shift, from 4 to 9, Tuesday through Saturday. I liked it. There's something very satisfying about putting books back in order. Dewey Decimal System. Everything has a number, everything has a place. But the library was almost always empty in the evenings, especially in winter. People would come in right after school let out, or during lunch hour, but by 5 or 6 it was just me and Mrs. Kowalski, the head librarian, and she'd usually be in her office doing paperwork, or ordering new books from a catalogue that looked like it hadn't been updated since 1987. So I'd shelve books in the quiet, and I'd hear the building, the way the radiators clanked, the way the wind hit the windows, the way my footsteps sounded different depending on whether I was in the fiction section or the reference section, which had older carpet, more worn down. One night, this was January, I think, or early February, I was shelving in the 800s. That's literature, poetry, plays, and I found a book that someone had left on top of the shelf instead of in it. It was a collection of poems by someone I'd never heard of. I can't remember the name now. But I opened it to a random page, the way you do, and I read a poem about a man who lives by himself and talks to his furniture, not in a magical way. The furniture doesn't talk back, but he just talks to it. He says good morning to his table. He apologizes to his chair when he bumps into it. He asks his lamp how it's doing, and the poem wasn't making fun of him. It was just describing him gently, the way you'd describe light coming through a window. I stood there in the 800s and I thought, I do that. I say excuse me to my coat rack when I knock it over. I say thank you to my coffee maker. Just last week I told my car I was sorry for not washing it more often. And I didn't know if that was loneliness, or kindness, or just a thing people do when they spend a lot of time by themselves. Maybe all three. I checked out the book. You got a staff discount, which meant free, and I took it home. I don't think I ever finished it, but I kept it for a long time, and sometimes I'd flip through it, looking for that one poem, and I'd never find it. I wonder if I imagined it, or if it was there, and I just kept missing it, the way you miss the street you're looking for, even though you drive past it 3 times. There's a kind of loneliness that happens in crowds, too. That's the worst kind, I think. I went to a wedding once, my cousin Sarah's wedding. It was downstate, in Grand Rapids, at a hotel with a big ballroom and a chocolate fountain, and a DJ who kept saying things like, "Let's keep this party going," even though it was only 7:30 and most people were still eating salad. I didn't know anyone there except my immediate family, and they were all busy talking to Sarah's in-laws or dancing or taking pictures by the chocolate fountain. So I sat at my table, table 9, way in the back near the kitchen doors, and I ate my chicken breast, which was pretty good, and I watched everyone else have a great time. There was a couple at table 7 who were clearly in love. They kept laughing at private jokes and holding hands under the table. There was a group of Sarah's college friends who were all doing a coordinated dance to Uptown Funk, and they'd clearly practiced because they all knew the same moves. There was a little kid, maybe 4 years old, who was running around with a balloon, just absolutely thrilled about that balloon. And I was happy for all of them. I really was. But I also felt like I was watching everything through glass, like I was at the aquarium and everyone else was a fish, and I was just standing there with my hands in my pockets, thinking about how nice it must be to be a fish. At one point, the DJ put on a slow song. I think it was Unchained Melody, the Righteous Brothers version, and everyone paired off. Couples went to the dance floor, even some of the older folks, people's grandparents, shuffling slowly in small circles. And I thought about getting up and leaving, just walking out to my car and driving home, but that felt like it would be more noticeable than just sitting there. So I sat there. And then my Aunt Linda came over. Aunt Linda's great. She's maybe 70, and she always wears enormous jewelry and perfume that smells like if a garden could also be a department store. She said, "Joey, why are you sitting here by yourself like a sad lamp?" I said I was fine, just resting my feet, which wasn't true because I'd been sitting the whole time. She said, "Come on, dance with your aunt," and she pulled me up before I could object. So we danced. Well, she danced. I mostly just shuffled and tried not to step on her feet. She talked the whole time, telling me about her cruise to Alaska and her new dentures and how she'd started watching a show on PBS about people who restore old furniture. And wasn't that interesting? And it was nice. It didn't cure the loneliness. I still felt like glass, like aquarium, but it helped. Sometimes loneliness isn't something that gets fixed. It's just something that gets acknowledged. Like Aunt Linda noticing I was sitting alone and deciding that wasn't acceptable. At least not for one dance. When the song ended, she patted my shoulder and said, "You're a good boy, Joey," which is what she's been saying to me since I was 6. And then she went back to her table. I stayed on the dance floor for the next song, which was September by Earth, Wind and Fire, and I did a little swaying by myself, and I tried to look like I was having a good time, and maybe I was. It's hard to tell sometimes. I want to tell you about my neighbor, Jean. Jean lives 2 doors down from me, in a yellow house with a porch that's slowly sinking on one side. He's maybe 65, 70, retired. Used to work at the paper mill before it closed. Now he mostly just works on his lawn, which is the nicest lawn on the block, maybe the nicest lawn in Marquette. He's got it cut in diagonal stripes, like a baseball field. I don't know how he does that. Jean and I don't talk much. We wave when we see each other. Sometimes, if I'm getting my mail at the same time he's getting his mail, we'll have a brief conversation about the weather or about how the Packers are doing, even though we're in Michigan and technically we should root for the Lions. But a lot of people up here root for the Packers anyway, because we're closer to Wisconsin than we are to Detroit. But here's the thing about Gene. Every single day, at exactly 5:30 in the evening, he goes for a walk. I know this because I've seen him hundreds of times. He walks down to the end of the block, turns left, goes down to the lake, walks along the shore for a while, and then comes back. The whole thing takes maybe 40 minutes. He always walks alone. I used to think maybe he was lonely, that maybe the walk was his way of getting out of the house, of being around people even if he wasn't talking to them. But then one time, this was last summer, I saw him sitting on a bench by the lake, just looking out at the water, and he had this expression on his face that I can only describe as content. Not happy exactly, but peaceful. Like he'd figured something out that I hadn't. I wondered if maybe Gene wasn't lonely at all, if maybe he'd just made peace with being alone, or if maybe he had a whole rich life I didn't know about, friends, hobbies, a secret second family in Wisconsin. You never know. But I think about Gene a lot when I think about loneliness, because I wonder if there's a difference between being lonely and being solitary. If maybe some people are just built for solitude, the way some people are built for marathons or playing the accordion. And then I wonder if I'm built for solitude, or if I'm just bad at the alternative. I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. There's this thing that happens sometimes, late at night, where I'll be lying in bed, not quite asleep, and I'll hear a sound from somewhere else in the house. The furnace kicking on, a branch tapping against the window, Pancake knocking something off the counter in the kitchen, probably on purpose. And for just a second, less than a second really, just a flash, I'll think, there's someone else here. Not in a scary way, in a comforting way. Like maybe I'm not alone. Like maybe there's another person in the other room, making tea or reading a book, or just existing quietly the way people do when they share a space. And then I'll remember, oh no, it's just me. It's just the house. It's just the sound of being alone. And that moment, that little flash of hope, and then the quiet correction, that's loneliness. That's the thing itself. I read somewhere that loneliness is actually bad for you, not just emotionally, but physically, that it can affect your heart, your immune system, your brain. That being lonely is as bad for you as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, which seems like a very specific number, and I don't know how they measured that, but it stuck with me. 15 cigarettes a day. I don't smoke. Never have. But I thought, if loneliness is that bad for you, shouldn't there be a warning label? Shouldn't someone tell you, like caution, spending too much time by yourself may result in existential dread and a slightly elevated heart rate? But I guess we don't talk about it that way. We talk about loneliness like it's a personal failure. Like if you're lonely, it's because you're not trying hard enough. You're not going out enough. You're not putting yourself out there. You're not joining clubs or swiping on apps or saying yes to invitations. And maybe that's true sometimes. Maybe I could try harder. Maybe I could go to more things. There's a folk music jam session every Thursday at the community center, and I keep meaning to go, but I never do, because the idea of walking into a room full of people who already know each other and trying to find a place to sit feels like trying to join a conversation that started 20 minutes ago. But also, I think sometimes loneliness isn't a bad effort. Sometimes it's just about being a person in the world, and the world is big, and you're small, and sometimes you just don't fit into the spaces that other people seem to fit into so easily, like a puzzle piece from a different puzzle. When I was a kid, I had a best friend named Marcus. We did everything together. We built forts in the woods behind his house. We collected rocks, the ones that looked like they might have fossils in them, even though they never did. We made up a language that only we could speak, which mostly just involved adding izzle to the end of every word. So hello became hello izzle, and do you want a snack became do izzle you, izzle, want izzle a izzle, snack izzle. which took forever to say but we thought was hilarious. Marcus moved away when we were in 6th grade. His dad got a job in Ohio, and they were gone by the end of the summer. We promised we'd write letters. We did for a while, but then the letters got shorter and less frequent, and eventually they stopped. I haven't talked to Marcus in probably 25 years. I looked him up on the internet once. He's married, has 2 kids, works in insurance. He looks happy in his pictures. I'm glad. But sometimes I still think about him, about the forts we built and the language we made up. And I wonder if he ever thinks about me, if he ever remembers that summer when we tried to dig to China in his backyard and got about 3 feet down before his mom made us stop because we were ruining the lawn. I don't think I've had a friend like that since. Not a best friend. Not someone who felt like the other half of something. Maybe that's part of loneliness too. Not just missing people, but missing a version of yourself that only existed because of other people. The version of me that spoke in Isle and believed you could dig to China if you just tried hard enough. I want to tell you something I've never told anyone. Sometimes when I'm feeling particularly lonely, I'll go to the diner, the one on Front Street, the one that's open 24 hours. I'll go at a weird time, 9:30 on a Tuesday, or 2 in the afternoon on a Sunday, when it's not too crowded but not completely empty. And I'll sit at the counter, not a booth, the counter, because when you sit at the counter, you're part of the infrastructure. You're part of the diner itself. And the waitress, her name's Donna. She's been working there for probably 30 years. She'll come over and she'll say, "Coffee, Hon?" And I'll say yes, even if I don't really want coffee because it's part of the ritual. And then I'll order something. Pancakes, usually, or a grilled cheese, something simple. And I'll sit there, and I'll eat slowly, and I'll listen to the sounds of the diner. The sizzle of the grill, the murmur of conversations from the booths, the clatter of plates, the bell that dings when someone opens the door. And here's the thing, nobody talks to me. Donna will refill my coffee and maybe make a comment about the weather, but that's it. I'm just another person at the counter, eating pancakes, minding my own business. But somehow that helps. Being alone around other people, being part of the ambient noise of the world. It's like I'm lonely, but I'm lonely together with everyone else, and that makes it a little more bearable. I'll usually stay for about an hour, long enough to finish my food and have 2 cups of coffee and maybe read part of the newspaper that someone left behind. And then I'll pay. Donna always says, "You take care now, Hon," and I always say, "You too," and I'll go home, and I'll feel a little better. Not cured, but better. There's a kind of loneliness that comes from the future too, not just the past. I think about this sometimes, about how the older you get, the more you realize that certain things probably aren't going to happen. Not because they can't, but because the window is closing, or because you've made choices that led you down one path instead of another, and you can't really go back. Like I'm probably never going to be a famous musician. I play a little guitar, but I'm not good enough, and I'm definitely not young enough. That ship has sailed. It sailed a long time ago, and I wasn't on it, and that's okay. I made peace with that. But there are other things I haven't made peace with. Like I might not ever get married. I might not ever have kids. I might spend the rest of my life living alone in this house, talking to Pancake and my furniture, and the guy at the hardware store who knows my name, because I go there so often. And that's a kind of loneliness too. Future loneliness. The loneliness of imagining all the years ahead of you, stretching out like a long, empty road. I'm not saying it will be that way. Maybe it won't. Maybe I'll meet someone tomorrow. Maybe I'll join that folk music jam session and make 10 new friends. And suddenly my life will be full of people and plans and noise. But maybe I won't, and I have to be okay with that possibility. I have to learn to carry it without letting it crush me. I think the hardest part about loneliness is that you can't really explain it to people who aren't lonely, or even to people who are, because loneliness is so specific, it's so particular to the person feeling it. Like if I told someone, "I'm lonely," they might say, "Well, why don't you call someone?" Or, "Why don't you go out more?" Or, "Have you tried online dating?" And those are reasonable suggestions. They come from a good place. But they don't quite touch the thing itself, Because my loneliness isn't just about not having people to talk to. It's about something deeper. It's about feeling like I'm on the outside of something I can't quite name. Like there's a party happening somewhere, and everyone's invited except me. But also the party might not exist, and maybe I invented the whole thing in my head. Does that make sense? Probably not. That's what I mean. It's hard to explain. Let me tell you about the stars. On clear nights, when there's no clouds and no moon, I'll go outside and look at the stars. I'll stand in my backyard, or I'll walk down to the lake, and I'll just look up. Up here, in the Upper Peninsula, away from big cities, you can see so many stars. More than you'd think. The Milky Way looks like a smudge of light across the sky, like someone spilled milk and didn't clean it up. And when I look at the stars, I feel two things at once. First, I feel very small, insignificant, like I'm just a tiny speck on a tiny planet in a universe so big that my brain can't even really comprehend it. All my problems, all my loneliness, all the things I worry about, they're nothing. They're less than nothing. In 100 years, I'll be gone, and the stars will still be there, and nobody will remember that I stood in my backyard feeling lonely on a Tuesday night in February. But second, and this is the strange part, I also feel connected to everything, to the stars, to the universe, to all the other people who have ever stood outside and looked up and felt small, because I know I'm not the only one. I know there are other people right now, at this exact moment, standing outside and looking at the same stars and feeling the same things. Loneliness, wonder, a kind of ache that doesn't have a name. And somehow knowing that makes it better. Not completely better, but better. We're all lonely together under the same sky. I should probably tell you something hopeful now. That's how these things are supposed to go, right? You talk about something sad, and then you find the silver lining, the lesson, the reason it was all worth it. But I'm not sure I have that. I'm not sure loneliness has a solution, or a moral, or a neat ending. I think it's just a thing that happens to people. Like rain, like traffic, like the way bread gets stale if you leave it out too long. Some days are lonelier than others. Some days I wake up and I feel fine, good even, and I go about my business, and I don't think about loneliness at all. I think about what I'm making for dinner, or whether I should finally fix that loose floorboard in the hallway, or what kind of bird that is sitting on my fence post. And other days I wake up and the loneliness is just there, sitting on my chest like a cat, not Pancake, a heavier cat, a metaphorical cat made of sadness and existential dread. And on those days I just have to carry it. I have to get up and brush my teeth and make coffee and go to work and come home and make dinner and watch TV and go to bed, all while carrying this heavy invisible thing that no one else can see. And I do. I carry it. Because what else are you going to do? But here's something I've learned after all these years of carrying it. Loneliness doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you're unlovable or strange or wrong. It just means you're human. Because humans need other humans. We're built that way. We're pack animals. We're supposed to live in groups and share food and tell stories around fires and know that if we get sick or hurt, someone will take care of us. But modern life doesn't always allow for that. We live in separate houses, work separate jobs, drive separate cars. We have more ways to communicate than ever before, but somehow we're more isolated. We can send a message to someone on the other side of the world in half a second, but we don't know the names of the people who live next door. So of course we're lonely. It would be weird if we weren't, and I hope, that acknowledging that is the first step, not fixing it, just acknowledging it. Yes, I'm lonely sometimes. Yes, that's hard. Yes, I wish it were different. But also, I'm still here. I'm still waking up every morning. I'm still making coffee and feeding Pancake and saying hello to Gene when he walks by. I'm still buying experimental cereals at the grocery store and going to the diner and looking at the stars. I'm still participating in life, even when life feels lonely. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that has to be enough. It's getting late now. I can tell, because the house is making its nighttime sounds. The furnace is humming. The walls are creaking. I'm tired. That good kind of tired, where your body feels heavy and your mind feels soft. I hope you're tired too. I hope you're drifting off, or maybe you're already asleep, and you're hearing this in your dreams. And in your dreams, it makes perfect sense. I want to leave you with one more thing. A few weeks ago, I was at the library, the one here in Marquette, not the one where I used to work, and I was looking for a book on Midwestern birds because I'm trying to get better at identifying the birds in my yard. There's one that I keep seeing that I think might be a cedar waxwing, but I'm not sure. Anyway, I was in the nature section, and I accidentally knocked over a whole stack of books that someone had left on a chair. They went everywhere. It was very loud. Everyone looked at me. I was so embarrassed. I got down on my hands and knees and started picking them up as fast as I could, apologizing to no one in particular. And then someone else got down and started helping me. A woman, maybe around my age, with grey hair and glasses. She didn't say anything. She just helped. We picked up all the books together and then we stood up and I said, "Thank you." And she said, "No problem." And then we both went back to what we were doing. That was it. That was the whole interaction. But I thought about it for days afterward. How she didn't have to help me. How she could have just watched, or walked away, or laughed. But she didn't. She got down on the floor of the library and helped a stranger pick up books. And I thought, that's the opposite of loneliness. Not romance, not friendship, not even connection, really. Just kindness. Just someone seeing that you need help and deciding to help you. Maybe that's all we can do for each other. Maybe that's the answer, or part of the answer. We can't cure each other's loneliness. We can't fill the empty spaces or make the ache go away. But we can get down on the floor and help pick up the books. We can wave to our neighbors. We can say, "Excuse me," and "Thank you," and "You take care now." We can dance with our aunts at weddings. We can leave poetry books in the 800s for strangers to find. We can be kind, even when we're lonely. Especially when we're lonely. Because maybe kindness is the only thing that makes loneliness bearable. Not kindness toward ourselves, though that too. But kindness toward each other. All of us, standing in our separate cereal aisles, looking at the stars, carrying our invisible cats. All of us, lonely together. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for listening, or for falling asleep. Either way, I'm going to go to bed now. I'm going to brush my teeth and put on my pajamas, the flannel ones with the little trees on them, and I'm going to get into bed. And Pancake will probably join me, even though she pretended not to like me earlier. She always does. And tomorrow I'll wake up and make coffee and feed Pancake, and maybe I'll see Gene on his walk. And the day will happen, the way days do. And maybe I'll feel lonely, or maybe I won't. But either way, I'll be okay. We'll all be okay. Good night. Sleep well. I'll still be here in the morning.